Hi, welcome back to Little Mo Travels. My name is Monique, and this is my travel channel, Little Mo Travels. Please follow me on Instagram at Little Mo Travels on Instagram, as well as my YouTube channel. Check out some of the other videos I have about my study abroad experience, as well as the few trips I've taken more recently, my Sierra Leone trip, and just watch some of those videos and get a sense of what I'm talking about and everything. As you all can see here, I have someone joining me. This is my best friend, Paris. Paris.
Hello. Paris. No, I'm kidding. I muted myself for a second because somebody outside had the biggest engine in a truck driving around. I hope you couldn't hear that.
No, I couldn't.
um, but yes, my name is Paris Cunningham, aka Paris Jane. I am Lil Mo or Monique's best friend, but I'm also a musician, an artist, and a fellow podcaster myself. Well, this is not a podcast; this is a channel, but I do podcasts. Yeah.
You do podcasts. I was like, yeah. You like, this is a channel. I was like, yeah, it is. Well, today, the reason why I have Paris on with me is because, well, one, I wanted more people to be on my channel with me, but also because Paris and we did a podcast together. Ooh, it's like been 3 years, something like that. Was it during the pandemic? I feel like it was during the pandemic.
3 years is crazy, but yeah.
Wow. It doesn't feel like it's been that long.
Right.
Golly. Well, we did a podcast together called Long Distance Conversations. We never put it out, but we did complete most of the season. And one of the episodes that we did was about my study abroad experience. And I wanted to bring that to this channel. So I asked Paris, since it was me and Paris that had the original conversation, I wanted to wrap back around and have this one with her as well. But this time around, I incorporated other questions that people have asked me or wanted me to talk about when it comes to my study abroad experience. Pretty much it's just going to be Paris interviewing me about my study abroad experience and just me answering questions. So let's get started. So first, where did I study abroad? I studied abroad in Jaén, Spain. Jaén is about 3 hours south of Madrid, about like an hour north or 3 hours north of Malaga, and an hour to the the hour to the east of Granada. So that kind of gives a sense for anyone who's looking at a map. You could probably find where Jaén is by those directions, mostly because Jaén is not a tourist city. It's a come and learn Spanish city, which is what I did while I was there. So the name of my program was a Learn Spanish program, a Learn Language program, but specifically I learned Spanish. And the purpose was to take students who have been studying Spanish, who wanted to get a little bit better at learning the language and immerse them in a city where there is mostly Spanish spoken. And so to do things like getting around, taking the bus, going to school, purchasing things, getting things set up. So when I had to set up my cell phone plan, I had to be able to speak Spanish. And at the time I didn't. So I just leaned on my host parents. But for the most part, to function for most of the year, I had to learn Spanish. And so that's the point of the program and why I got started in it. And so I wanted to just do a quick intro for that. And now I'm going to pass it off to Paris to ask me some questions.
Yes, no, I appreciate that introduction because I wasn't really aware that the program that you were in, or that pretty much the city that you were in, is geared toward helping people to learn Spanish. And so that would make sense that you would be able to have host parents and have as much assistance as you did, because a lot of us, and just a disclaimer for anybody watching, I have not been in a study abroad program. I have only ever lived in the United States. I've lived in a few different states, but I've only ever lived here. So I will be learning as you all will, and I will be just as curious as you to learn some of this again and to learn some new things. But yes, so that is really interesting. And I guess it would kind of be reminiscent of like the classes we have here, ESOL, English as a second language, but a little bit more immersive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
Like,
gonna say, I just always thought study abroad was you just get flued out and they find some place for you to stay in some dorms or something, and you're just a student and you sink or swim.
right. But sometimes it is like that. Sometimes in some programs, yes. But my program, more specifically, because I don't want to name the university's program that I went to is different from other programs like, what's the name of that? I forgot the name of the program. There's like other companies that do study abroad programs, but I went through my university. And because I did that, it was a lot more training wheels. And so there was no feeling of like sinking or swimming. It was like they intentionally kept us all together in a group, and like we did excursions together. We like traveled together, which was not intentional, but it was like a byproduct of you all are going to the same place. You might as well get to know each other and travel together kind of thing. So yeah.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Yay.
Okay. So I am going to go ahead and hop into the questions. And I guess that's a perfect lead in from where we are. So, what encouraged you, or what was like, what brought you into the idea of even applying to study abroad?
Well, I always start with my base story. So my base story is I remember when the Cheetah Girls came out, and and every time I say it, a whole bunch of people are like, the Cheetah Girls. Their second movie was to Spain. It was to Barcelona. Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a Barcelona. And I was like, wow. Like, look at all these people. It was like women of color traveling the world. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. That was when I told myself, well, I'm going to Barcelona. Like, I will be there dancing in the streets. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But then when I got to college, when I got to my first school, there weren't that many opportunities to study abroad. There was like one of the options was Guatemala, and then there was like two or three other options, but it wasn't that many. And so I decided, like, you know what, I'm just gonna wait it out. I ended up transferring schools, and then at the school I did end up at, that's where I had way more options and a lot more opportunity. Like, hey, you should probably study abroad before you graduate. So that was the baseline of like what made you think about studying abroad in the first place? But then when I went to the new school that I transferred to, I went to the study abroad office, and LaShawn. So LaShawn is the woman that was helping me like kind of get my process started at the time. Now she is my very close friend, but at the time she worked in the study abroad office. And I was telling her, my dreams and wishes and things I want to do and travel all these countries and speak Spanish and blah, blah, blah. And I told her I wanted to go to Puerto Rico. And she was like, Puerto Rico? She was like, there are way better options for you to learn Spanish and travel. And so I
Yeah.
ended up choosing to go to high end because the program itself was just a better setup for me. Puerto Rico would have been like what you were saying before, like a drop you off and have a good time kind of situation. Whereas
Yeah.
this program was intentional about teaching you Spanish. And so all your classes was in Spanish. Your teachers were all going to be speaking Spanish, no matter where you went. Even my host parents, my host dad, he could speak English. My host mom, now she could speak a little English. And Maria, she could speak English now too. But it was nothing but Spanish. That's what it was. And at home, even though my host dad could speak English, he was not speaking to me in English. He was speaking to me in Spanish.
I have a quick like sort of a B question to insert. Can you tell me and anybody viewing a little bit about your host parents and that experience?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like how you got, because I don't know the process, like for you got into the program, they suggested high end, and then how did you end up getting your host parents?
So they are assigned by the program. So on their end, pretty much my host mom, she works at the university. So she always knew when there were going to be new students coming in. And what the university did was just put a call out. Everybody who is interested in hosting students, let us know. This is how much you'll get paid for it. This is how long your obligation will be. And for them, it was $800 in total. and the obligation was 1 month. So I got there, I stayed in the hotel for a few days, and then from that point on, when I moved in with them, they had 1 month to kind of help acclimate me. And then moving forward, I could have chose to stay with them and pay them more money, but I was like, before I got here, I was living on my own, so I need that kind of space. So on their end, that's what it looked like. They just had to put their bid in, and then they would get assigned a me. And then on my end, it was a part of the program. So if you're doing this learn language program, you're going to stay with the host family, period. But that's not everybody's experience. Sometimes a program will say that it's an option, like, oh, you can stay with a host family, or we can find you a place, or not we, you will probably be able to find a place somewhere. Or some programs even have spaces on campus. Sometimes it's an option, but for me, it was assigned. So I did all my paperwork. This is beyond like my visa. I had my visa at this point in time. It was almost time to go. And then about a month out, they gave us our assignments. So they sent us they as in the study abroad department sent us an email saying, hey, these are your host families, contact information. And they gave us some other things to know about, like expectations, like cultural expectations. When you show up, make sure to bring a gift, because that's, a cultural expectation. When you're meeting someone, you bring something, blah, 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 blah. So they did that whole thing. All I did was hit them up on WhatsApp. Did we do a call? No, I think we just messaged back and forth for a little bit. And then when I got there, stayed at the hotel for a couple of days. And then the program threw a shindig, a little gathering,
orientation party.
right. And invited all of the host parents from the program and all of the students from the program. We all got together, we ate, had dinner and stuff like that. And then they like introduced us to our host parents. And so that's how I met my wonderful, amazing host parents.
So we know that like you stay with your host parents for a month, and just for anybody, for context, somebody doesn't know, her host parents or host family consisted of, tell us your host dad, host mom, and host little hermanita.
Oh yeah. My host dad, his name is Enrique. But the way my host mom pronounces it it's Heinrich.
Heinrich.
In Catalan, Heinrich is Enrique in Spanish. And so his name is Heinrich because he's Catalan, but my host mom calls him that. And when I first saw it in this like Spanish spelling, I was like, oh, Enrique, because that's how I would say it, like this. My host mom, something I learned about her, funny enough, this last trip, I learned that her first name is Dolores. This entire time, I thought her actual first name was Lola, because that's what I had been calling her. But her government name is Dolores. Wow. Just wow.
Crazy.
I know, right? And my hermanita, her name is Maria. Maria, funny enough, I learned this time too. They named her because, Spanish people, their like their base religion is Catholic, Catholicism. But that's not why they named her Maria. They named her Maria because it's the same in both Catalan and Spanish. They said that both sides of her family will be able to pronounce her name because it's the same. I was like, wow, that's why. I'm like, yeah, okay.
It's practical. For real. Practical and tactical.
Yes, that's funny.
I do wonder, so what was a week or a day, whichever one makes the most sense to explain, but what was a week or a day like in the program?
So I'll do a day because a week is kind of like the same. So a day, I'd get up, my host parents would make me breakfast or whatever. I could have walked or taken the bus to class, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna walk, because in America we drive everywhere. And so I took advantage of having to walk. Man, I was slim. Anyway, That's another topic for another day. And so I would walk to school. The walk was about 25 minutes, 30 minutes. And it was like a downhill because High End sits on a hill. And my host parents live closer to the city center, which is towards the top. The school is all the way at the bottom of the hill. Like,
So you was walking the whole time, like,
yes, like this.
yes.
So I'd get to school. We had 3 classes a day, 4 classes a day. I can't recall. This was 6 years ago. The way that the classes were set up, you first out the gate, you had to take a test so they could see where your Spanish level was at. So I think I started at A2. And the way that the levels are there letters and then numbers. So you have A1, A2, and then B1, B2, C1, C2, all the way up to D. And is that up to D? I think it is up to D. And so I was at A2. So that means I was still a beginner, but I had some Spanish under my belt. And so the way that our classes were put in order was based on that. They had to know that first so that they can put you in the right classes for your language level. And so we took the same types of classes that we would take here. Math, we took a culture and identities class, we took a reading class, English, which is not English, it was English here, but there it's like reading comprehension. And then I forgot the 4th class, but there was another one, and it was all taught in Spanish. Depending on when your classes were, you had to move between the different floors and the different teachers. And so depending on what I had the first day, I would be upstairs, downstairs, or whatever. Do class, we would get out at like 3 because siesta. So siesta would be on and popping. I would go back. Either my host mom would pick me up, or because she worked at the university, she worked in the library, or works because she still works there. And she would take me back to the house. We would go pick up Maria, and then we go back to the house. Oh, and we also pick up my house dad, and then we go back to the house. She would cook, and then we just have a siesta. So either watch TV, or there might be a game show on, or it might be some drama that she liked to watch or something like that. Or I would go in my room and I would watch this show. It was called El Ministerio del Tiempo. Basically, it was like a time traveling show. And it was mad cool because there was different people from different eras that got stuck in the same era all together. And the 3 of them would then time travel and solve crimes and stuff like that. It's like the best show. And I'm going to spend my money on buying it on YouTube or something because I love that show. And it was so easy to understand. But anyway, and so that's what we would do. Then after siesta, Maria might have a swim lesson or a violin lesson or some lesson. She always has something to do. So we would do that. And then we would all go together as a family, which, that means a lot to me because my family is very like separated. We didn't really do stuff together. We didn't eat together growing up. We didn't people didn't show up to my stuff, like to my practices or to my games or anything like that. And so we did everything together, which, sidebar, if anyone was ever curious as to how these people became to mean so much to me in my life, that kind of like lets people into how we got there, because I had experienced so much about having a family that I hadn't experienced before. And that's what made the experience for me. But anyway, go back to what I was talking about. After that, we would go after Maria's practice, whatever she was doing, swimming, violin lessons, whatever. After that, we would go back to the house and get something to eat, or we'd go out and get tapas or something like that, and then come back to the house and chill again. Either my host dad was reading something, or we watched some on TV, or Maria would want to play a game with me or something like that. And this was also the time that I would use to catch up with people at home, do some homework. My host dad, that's also another thing. My host dad would help me with my homework after siesta. So we would eat lunch, we would chill a little bit, and then he'll be like, okay, so what homework do you have today? Blah, blah, blah. And so that was in the beginning. Then I started tutoring their friends' kids in English. So the way that would deviate is I have the regular day at school, except this time, if I was tutoring folks, I would either go to their house after, or I would wait for my host mom to pick me up. Then I moved out And so after I moved out, I just had lunch with my host family on Tuesdays. So that's the only time my host mom would pick me up. After that, after school, I would just go home on the bus with everybody else. So yeah, it changed. A day in the program changed depending on when it was in the program.
Got you. Essentially, my mind works in stories, right? Mm-hmm. So my mind's taking this like a story, but you're in the program now. You have finished your month with your host parents and you are living where you live. So we know what the days look like. We know that you have friends from the United States that you're grouped with. So what countries did you guys visit while you were in Spain? Or what places did you guys go on your downtime?
So in the beginning, because my financial aid didn't kick in until January, we were just going like to the excursions that the program has. So I had mentioned earlier that we would do excursions together. They were required. And right. So all of us, all 32 of us, would get on a bus or two buses and travel to whatever city nearby.
Got you. And go back a little bit. When did you get there versus when you got your financial aid?
That's a great question. So I got there September the 1st. That was day one. My financial aid kicked in like January 15th or something like that. 16th, something crazy like that.
So how did you pay for life?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So I had raised money before I left, and I think my host parents had lent me like €50 once. My grandma, she would send me money, but I also had a credit card. And so through all of those different avenues, I figured it out. I didn't travel nowhere. So I literally did the excursions. And I think the only place I went to in the fall was London. And that's because I had bought tickets to that Chance concert that I went to in the fall. That was it. So everything else, how I was able to get around in the fall and travel and stuff like that was because we were going to all these cities in Spain. And that's how we kind of got started. Also, in the fall, actually, I had also paid for this trip. That's when I went to Morocco, was in the fall. But that was like a group kind of situation. And so it didn't cost a whole lot of money to do that. I also interned for this travel agency where students from the United States who were traveling to Europe could look and see these different programs, stuff to do. So like the two that I went on were, what did I do? I did more than two, actually. I went to Amsterdam, and then there was another one I did. I think I did Rome, Paris, London, and another place through this travel agency. But I interned with them. And so depending on how many people, or not people, how many like peers I could get to join me on these trips or to go on these trips, I got points. And so I was able to take 2 trips for free because of how many people I got to sign up for these trips. So that was another way that I traveled in the fall. I think I went to Amsterdam in the fall, if I'm not mistaken. And that's how I got to go. Yeah. So after that, my financial aid finally kicked in, and I was able to go to London. I went to London twice in the spring. So altogether, I went 3 times. I went to Madrid in the spring, or was it in the fall? That might have been in the fall. I can't remember. I went to, on the spring break. So that would have been, I should start getting those on this day reminders sometime around this time in the next week or so. And I went to Greece, Athens, Greece. I went to Pisa in Italy, Rome. Where else did I go? On spring break. Paris and London, I think. Those were the places that I went on spring break. I had a friend in Milan. Technically, Lake Como is where she lives, but she took me to Milan when I came to visit. So in Italy, those are all the places I went to in Italy. And then my old roommate, Okan, from undergrad, he is from Germany. And so I went to go visit him, and that's how I ended up in Hamburg. And then where else did I go? I went a couple places. As a group, we went to Portugal. It was me and a group of ladies from the program. And then, the end of my spring break, I did as a group. So that was like London and Paris as a group of people from my program too. I feel like I'm missing something. Czech. I went to Czech Republic. That was the other thing I did as an intern. I went to Czech Republic and I went to Amsterdam with other people from the program. As for on my own through the program, through the internship, I had done Rome and somewhere else. I can't remember.
I'm trying to remember because I know you told me about it, but
I went so many places. That's the problem. Is like, damn, I actually don't recall all the places that I went to. But I think
go to Greece.
Yeah, so that was the first one. Athens, Greece.
Right. Okay. Yep. Nope.
I think that's it. I think I named all of them. There should be 10 countries in there. All those places that I named. So yeah. Ooh-wee.
Yes. So I wonder, well, okay, I will ask this question for the sake of time, but what what was it like being abroad as a person of color, especially in your program as well? Because I'm sure that it was kind of a like a mixture of people, but yeah.
Yeah. There were definitely other students of color, but there was only 2 Black people. It was me and my friend Alicia, and that was it. We were the only 2 Black people, but there were other students who were like Latinx, who were Asian, Pacific Islander, just a big mix. But when it came to, because that's what's interesting about being abroad, is when it came down to it, I I was more of an American than I was Black. Like when people approached me, it was like, oh, well, and honestly, that's only true to an extent too, because in Spain, a lot of the immigrants are Senegalese, and so to the untrained eye, who cannot tell people of the diaspora from different ways from people who are African born, they assume that I was Senegalese. And so at first I would get like the service wouldn't be as good, or they would answer my questions, but they wouldn't like, you know how like back in the day when you worked your part-time job in high school and stuff like that, you were there because you wanted the money, not because you wanted to, be friends with people and have a good time. It was like that. So they would answer my questions like they were because they had to, not because they wanted to, kind of thing.
Right.
And at first it would always be like y'all are staying. And I didn't get that all the time. Like I didn't get that experience all the time, but it happened. Then something would happen, whether they would hear me talking to someone else or they would hear me speaking Spanish or whatever. I would pull out my card or something like that. And somehow they would recognize that I was American. And then it kind of changed. And then they wanted to know all about America. And, I would never say I was from the United States. I would always say I was from California. And so they would want to know about California. How is it? How do you like it? What's the weather like? Have you ever been to Hollywood? Like those kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm.
But, being Black in America, you're used to the discrimination up front. Like, oh, but you was just hating on me 5 seconds ago, So that never turned me. It always made me feel like, so if you knew that I was American, because you have a certain feeling about these Senegalese people, you was about to talk to me crazy or treat me any kind of way. But now that you know that I'm American, now you want to treat me, because at the end of the day, everybody thinks that everyone in the United States is balling out of control and rich and all this other stuff. And I'll be over here like, nah, I probably got about as much money as these Senegalese people over
Right.
So you played yourself because I'm broke like a mug. Okay. So I don't know. That was the hard part, is like, then there would be the assumption of that, like, oh, you must have money, blah, blah, blah. So there was like always assuming that you got it, or they could talk you into buying some other stuff or whatever. It's like, bro, no, I'm broke. And I'm a student. That's the other thing. We are students. We are not rich. Like we did not have it. But whatever. And I'm thinking about going to different countries and where I didn't experience that at. So I didn't experience that in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam.
Place. I love that place.
Dude,
I really do.
we have to go back.
We do.
It felt so like progressive. Like,
yeah.
What here?
Yeah. If I had to live anywhere overseas, I would live in Amsterdam for sure.
I remember when you first said that, I was like, and I would come and visit all the time, all the time. I'm trying to think. Really, honestly, as a person of color, it was just kind of like I just had to recognize where I was at, make sure I was good. There were certain things that did happen that I didn't necessarily like. Like one time, this is when my grandma came to visit during Christmas. We were in Madrid and we had walked into this restaurant, and normally the way that here when we walk into a restaurant, you're gonna find a hostess like table, right? You're gonna find somebody, you walk in, you like, I want a two table for two or whatever, you let them know what you want, and then they'll come back and they guide you through the process. Whereas in Spain, it's a lot more loose and less hand-holdy. So you're not gonna find like that kind of setup unless it's like a real fancy spancy restaurant. But we were in the middle of Madrid, and so this was just a restaurant that was like, randomly in the middle of nowhere. We walked in the door. I was trying to get the attention of the waiter who was at the front, but he kept moving around, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I was waiting for him to finish whatever he was doing. Somebody came in behind us. He addressed them first. And I remember thinking to myself, you lucky that I can't speak Spanish that well. Because I would have said something. Because I'm the person that I was here. I speak up for stuff all the time. And so when that happened, I kind of was like, I'm also that person that's like, oh, that's okay. You must not want my money. So I was getting ready to walk out the door, and then a woman came out of nowhere and like, helped us. And so stuff like that, where I was like, did you overlook us because we're Black, or did you overlook us for another reason? It's probably because we were Black, but it's not right. It's not like American racism. It's like, and that's the thing. It's funny because the way that my friend who's in Italy explained it, Julia explained it like this. She was like, in Italy, and this was back during the time, and so it might have changed by now, but this is the way she explained it to me. She said there are two halves of this opinion when it comes to immigrants. There's the half that doesn't want Italy to help and put their resources towards these countries who need help, letting their people come into the country. And their reasoning is the same reason that these white people here be like, build the wall. They don't want any Mexican immigrants to come over and quote unquote take our jobs, which to me, because when she was explaining it to me, because I had heard that before, of like, we don't want them to come in and use our resources and stuff like that. I was like, well, that's real funny because in America it's like that, but I don't see none of these white people out here cleaning nobody's houses, making nobody's burgers, pulling nobody's fruit out the ground. I don't see none of y'all doing none of that. And so when she was explaining to me, at first I kind of was like, hold on, let her finish. And so she said, then the other half of it is there are people who want to help these people, but know that Italy does not have the infrastructure, the space, the money to support the amount of immigrants that are coming into the country. So you have the same issue, but you have two sets of people looking at it differently that are like we want to help, but we don't know how, versus nah, keep those people out of here. And so even that is like hearing that, and then being somebody who's a person of color, that's also feeling like, so there's racism everywhere, like everywhere. So at this point, would I rather live in the United States or somewhere else? I would probably rather live somewhere else, because American racism is like racism on crack. Like it's like racism on steroids. Whereas I go somewhere else, like I said, there's that buffer of being American that kind of like shields me from some things that I don't get that while living here in the United States. So.
Man, I have an interesting question. I'm not sure if I'll ask it because that makes me think, and it could definitely lead to a longer conversation. But I'll touch on it. I don't know if we'll discuss it. I'll touch on it. But what you said kind of makes me think of, it's almost like the flip side of when people of color, namely people from Africa, part of the African diaspora, that moved to the United States, and how people are kind of more like, I wouldn't say more receptive, but they receive a little less like racism than us who like are from black, from here, grew up on whatever street, Ninth and Grove, you live in Wichita or wherever. You get treated a lot differently than if you have some sort of accent or some sort of dialect that you speak in. Like there's a more of a it's really interesting how that translates across countries. But I will ask the final question, which you kind of touched on. But how do you feel that studying abroad affected your or affects currently your view of the United States?
Yeah. So what I was saying before, it makes me not want to be here anymore. I have things that I want to accomplish here in the United States, and that's what's holding me here. But I think about it in two ways. And when I go to another country and their infrastructure, their government, their way of living, their healthcare, transportation systems are all better. But the American way is to be like number one. So even though our healthcare system is like third from the bottom out of all the countries that have a healthcare system, I think we are really low. Like, and on most of the lists for like, infant survival rate, mother survival rate, like birth death, we're all like in the wrong places. Same thing with like our transportation systems. Same thing with our government. The number one thing, the thing that we are the best at is war. We are really good at war, and we have a really good military because we shove all of our money into that.
Oh, and entertainment.
Say it again.
And entertainment.
Yes, we're really good at that. Yep. And so when you have a country that's like that, that's very topsy-turvy, like top heavy, very much so focused on being the best, but not pouring resources and money into being the best, you have a lot of people that think they're the shit, but they're not. And so you have a lot of people, like I was ranting about this in one of my other videos. You have a lot of Americans that will go to other countries, eat their food, listen to their music, go to their tourist attractions and things like that. They'll like do all of that, but come back here and still say that we're the best. And it's just so funny because it's like, we're not even like, our people aren't even living that long. Like the average male age for dying is like 77 or something like that, 75. And women live just a little bit above that, 77 to like 83. If I recall correctly. And so even though we are a nation that's not poverty stricken, that we don't really rely on other nations for things except for certain goods and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
We're not doing very
it's like we have people walking around in nice clothes, shoes, and cars with disease.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or you could get something like cancer and not be able to afford to live.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just don't make no sense. And so when I leave here and I go to places where they're like, oh, from the, like Abdul, he always calls me rich woman. And it cracks me up because it's just real funny because that is exactly what they think of us. Like everybody in other countries, they think that we are balling out of control, but we're not. We are all living paycheck to paycheck. I know more people living paycheck to paycheck than not. I know more millennials that like maybe want to have children, but know they can't afford it, want to purchase a home, but can't afford it. And that's not just in California. That is everywhere across the United States. We can't even afford to live over here. So that's one way that I look at the United States, but it also made me look at seriously look at, would I continue to live here? Now, at the time when I was abroad, my grandparents were still alive. I still had to finish my degree. I still had to get my second degree. There were so many things that were tying me to the United States, but I came back, got my bachelor's degree, went back to school, got my master's degree. Grandpa passed away, grandma passed away. And now I'm here like, I could really finish out this contract and then go somewhere else. But who knows? I feel like after that, after studying abroad, it made it more tangible. It was like, you could go, adaptive. You could go adapt to a new environment, learn the language if they speak another language that's different than yours, and live there because you've done it before. So, yeah.
Okay. No, that's your thumbnail. But yes, okay. Well, thank you so much for talking about your experience studying abroad. Before we hop off, and we can use this as our closing, what would be some advice, like a tidbit of advice that you would give anyone, a person of color, because we like those. Not that we don't like others, but like, but what's a tidbit of advice you would give someone who is interested in studying abroad but might be reluctant?
Ooh, this happens a lot. There's not enough people of color that are studying abroad. And there's a difference between studying abroad and traveling abroad. There's not enough people of color studying abroad. And, you know, the same goes for traveling abroad. But I think it's that is the key, is that the sooner you do it, the better. The sooner you do it, the more you'll be able to learn and the more time you'll be able to take to see the world. And especially when you're studying, there's like a safety net that isn't there when you are an adult and have to have things like bills and PTO. And so for me, if there's anybody who's thinking about studying abroad that is kind of like hesitant or doesn't know if it's for them, the thing that I did, I went on YouTube, and of course I already knew that I wanted to, but I went on YouTube and I found all the people who were talking about living abroad or studying abroad as a person of color or as somebody who's Black. And I just kind of dived into their channels and their experiences to kind of see like, okay, is this something I'll be comfortable doing? I also went to my study abroad office. And so if there are like students who are watching this, who are thinking about going, I would definitely say start there, go to the office and ask a bunch of questions about where you can go and how much it's going to cost you and all this other stuff. That's another thing. If you're hesitant, the time to go is when you are younger, when you're in college, because you working with a lot more money. It's like scholarships and stuff you could get to help you study abroad and stuff like that. But when you are working, that's it. You know what I'm saying? Unless you find some grants or something like that, but you got to be doing academic work at the same time as that. So I would say do your research, do your Google search, go to YouTube, Instagram. Nowadays, it got the TikToks and all that. You go to your study abroad office and ask questions.
Not the TikToks.
The ticks and the talks. Cool. Thank you so much, Paris. Yay. Thank you for coming to my channel and interviewing me, even though we came up with these questions together. So where can people find you, Paris Jane?
Oh, snap. So The Paris Jane everywhere in the world. I have a website called theparisjane.com. That's TheParisJane.com. And then I'm also on all of the socials of the medias as The Paris Jane. Unless you try to find me on Facebook, and I would just suggest you type in Paris Cunningham. Okay. Because that's where. Right. But you can also still find me on there as The Paris Jane. I have a page for my artwork as well as many other things. And I have a podcast called Beyond Wichita that you should absolutely check out. And I have an EP called Make Believe. I have an EP called Make Believe, as the name Paris Jane, that is on all of the streaming services and all of that.
Wow. See, she does everything.
Literally. I build furniture too. No, I'm kidding. But I want to. That sounds
She does paintings, those in the background that you see on the wall there. She did those. She
does
graduation caps. Yes. She does everything. She makes cards, y'all. Please go follow my friend. Go buy her things. And thank you all for watching this video. I appreciate you all for taking the time. Again, like I said at the top of the video, check out my Instagram. Check out some of the other videos I did on YouTube. And hopefully I'll have Paris on another time. I'm hoping to also have other folks who have traveled who have, maybe wanted to travel or have questions or things like that they want to get out. I'm hoping to have more like that. And so thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Oh, wait, make sure
Oh,
to
wait.
like, comment, subscribe. If y'all have more questions about studying abroad or just traveling, put them in the comments. I will be
Yes.
answering them because I don't have the password to her YouTube, but
Yeah.
it will.
She said, because I don't have the password. Okay, cool. Thank you all for watching.
Bye.
Hey, folks. Welcome back to